Shot-by-shot analysis. It is disturbing as much as it is clinical. Experts talking about the bullets that killed Ryan Poston in his girlfriend Shayna Huber's murder trial. The defense pushing one question as they try to prove that Hubers acted in self-defense. If Ryan was sitting down, how could he be shot in the back?
Tom McKee was in court today for all of the testimony. Tom?
Well, Ryan Poston was shot 6 times, twice in the head, twice in the chest, one to the side, and there was a bullet wound to his back. Now, to Shayna Huber's attorneys, that back wound means their claim of self-defense is golden. But the prosecutors say all it means is murder.
Before we get started, please take a moment to support the channel. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what the weather's like there. It honestly helps more than you might think. Your support allows us to keep telling these stories the way they truly deserve to be told. It was a cold night on October 12, 2012, when 911 operators answered the call. The call came from a condominium in Highland Heights, just a few minutes from downtown Cincinnati.
Campbell County 911. Ma'am, I killed my boyfriend in self-defense. Okay, where are you at? I'm at 12 Meadow Lane, Highland Heights, Kentucky. 41076. Is it Meadow, anything else? Meadow View or something? No, 12 Meadow Lane, ma'am. I killed him in self-defense. Okay. Tell me again what unit you're in. It's not showing in my computer.
The call was made by 21-year-old Shayna Hubers. She had just shot her boyfriend, the guy she was, constantly breaking up with and getting back together with.
Hold on. What did you kill him with? A loaded gun in the house. I laid it on the bookshelf. I'm standing about 10 feet from his dead body. Okay, are you sure that he is dead? He's dead, ma'am. He's completely dead. Okay. And how long ago did you shoot him? I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, not even that long. 10 or 15 minutes ago? Yeah. Okay, what's your name? My name is Shayna Michelle Huber. Are they going to arrest me? Ma'am, I don't know what they'll do. We're going to send him out. I'm going to stay online with you, okay? I mean, I'm not a murderer, ma'am. I just killed him. What happened exactly? What happened? He beat me and tried to carry me out of the house, and I came back in to get my things, and he was right in front of me, and he reached down and grabbed the gun, and I grabbed it out of his hand and pulled the trigger. Okay. And how old is he? He's 29. He'll be 30 he would have been 30 on December the 30th. All right, what's his name? Ryan Carter Poston. He's an attorney in Cincinnati. So he slammed you into the couch, but you don't have any injuries? I don't have any injuries. I was just very frightened. He's a lot bigger than me. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. I'm 5'8", 120. And he picked me up and was carrying me out of the house. And I said, let me get my things at least if we're going to break up. And he wouldn't let me get my things. And when I reached around to try to get my things, I can hear myself echoing in the background, ma'am. It's just the tone system. The tone system has got a delay. And he pushed me down from the door all the way to the couch. And when they come here, they'll see how far that is. He threw me across the room. And I was very startled. I was laying on the floor. Okay. Ma'am, and then because he was twitching and I knew he was going to die anyway, and he was making funny noises, I shot him a couple more times just to kill him because I knew he would have been. I'm sorry, you said you shot him a couple more times after that? Yeah. How many times did you shoot him total? I don't know. Okay, because he was twitching and you knew he was going to die, so you shot him again? Enough to make sure he was dead because he was twitching so bad and I couldn't watch him lay there and twitch. So you shot him instead of calling 911?
For a small town that hadn't dealt with anything like this in years, it was a complete shock. The situation was just as overwhelming as it was disturbing. Shayna Hubers was taken to the police station, where she laid out her version of what had happened.
You want something to drink? Want some water? Do you smoke?
I will. I can.
All right, you can have a seat. I'll get you a cigarette too. Okay, I'll be with you in just a second. You're fine. What was his name?
The man that I killed. Ryan Carter Poston. I don't live with him.
Okay. Is that his address?
That's his place.
Okay, what's your address, sweetheart?
The victim was 29-year-old Ryan Poston. He was found lying face down on the floor, wedged between a table and a radiator. Blood covered the wall behind him and the table itself. Shia had fired 6 shots at him from close range, using his own gun. Ryan, who was 29, grew up in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. He was incredibly family-oriented, truly devoted to the people closest to him. He shared a very strong bond with his parents, Jay and Lisa, especially with his father. Even though his parents divorced when he was still a child, the family remained close. His stepfather, Peter Carter, quickly became an important part of his life. Before long, Ryan stepped into the role of a caring older brother to his 3 younger half-sisters, Allison, Elizabeth, and Catherine. And once he was old enough to make that decision for himself, Ryan even changed his middle name to Carter as a way of showing love and respect for his stepfather. He came from a family of hardworking people, and he was exactly the same way. Ryan was always driven, always focused. He spent part of his school years studying in the Philippines and Switzerland, and later attended Indiana University, where he pursued 3 majors at the same time: geography, history, and political science. He had one clear goal from the very beginning: he wanted to become a lawyer. Jay later said that once his son finally achieved that dream, he truly lived and breathed his work, bringing it home with him every single day. Ryan cared so deeply about helping people that sometimes clients came to him unable to pay, and he still took their cases anyway. His father said Ryan would answer calls, make people feel like they were the only person in the world, and treat their problems as if they were his own problems he was determined to solve. One of Ryan's friends described him as a fiery attorney. The moment he walked into a room, he commanded attention. But outside of work, he was much quieter and avoided confrontation whenever he could. Before long, Ryan became one of the youngest attorneys in the state to open his own law firm. He never wanted to slow down, and he even dreamed that one day he might run for public office. In 2011, after a recent breakup with his ex-girlfriend Lauren, Ryan began talking online with 19-year-old Shea Hubers after coming across her Facebook profile. Lauren later said their breakup had been amicable. They were both deeply focused on their careers, but she always hoped that one day they would find their way back to each other because she believed he was the love of her life. Shea and Ryan shared mutual friends, including one who was Ryan's cousin. He initially reached out to her after liking a few of her photos. In April of 2011, Shea turned 20, and after several months of online conversations, the two finally met in person. Shea had received a scholarship to study psychology at the University of Kentucky, while Ryan lived nearly 100 miles away in a newly purchased condominium. Despite the distance and nearly a decade age gap, their relationship moved fast. Before long, Shea met Ryan's family and began spending holidays with them. For Ryan, that meant everything. His family's opinion mattered to him more than almost anything else. Shea's friends described her in much the same way people talked about Ryan. She was charming, attractive, and incredibly intelligent. From a young age, she had been involved in gifted programs. She also loved being on stage, especially musical theater. Friends said she was so naturally dramatic that pursuing the spotlight just made sense. She graduated from university several years ahead of her peers and later went on to pursue graduate studies. On paper, Ryan and Shea looked like the perfect couple. So, what actually happened that night? Back at the police station, Shea Hubers talked a lot. She was read her rights and asked for a lawyer, but she kept talking anyway, continuing to share her version of events without an attorney present.
You have the right to remain silent.
I do want an attorney.
Okay. So I can't ask you any questions at all.
But Shea kept talking to anyone who was willing to listen.
I was so out of it. I was like, this is not the thing black killing, and can you come to the scene? I was raised really Christian, and murder is a sin. And I wasn't doing anything that was mean. I was like begging him to stay in the relationship and be with me because I knew that we weren't really loving each other. Ryan had told me that he loved me and wanted to be with me.
From the very beginning, Shea insisted that the relationship had been abusive. She claimed Ryan was always harsh, distant, and aggressive, telling her she needed plastic surgery, saying she should lose weight. And now, she said, things had crossed a line and turned physical. According to her, everything had just gone too far. That night, she claimed, she had been forced to defend herself.
I knew he was violent. I knew he was crazy. He was screaming at me, telling me I was hillbilly, that he hates me. He was throwing me around the room, like picking me up and like had my face and stuff. Pulled me by the ponytail of my hair. I had my head banged and did a few different things tonight. picking me up and throwing me against the bookshelf and calling me a hillbilly. I've done funniest jokes before. And I shot him in self-defense because he's done stuff before where I've hit my head on the headboard and could have died.
Shea claimed that night he was grabbing her and slamming her into the walls. And just when she thought he had finally calmed down and sat at the table, everything suddenly went from 0 to 100 all over again.
He was saying that he was so abusive while he was throwing me around the room. I think in the midst of that, my love turned to hate. I remember screaming, reaching up to grab the shirt. You out there, you mock my family out there.
But where did the gun come from? Ryan was licensed to carry a firearm and kept several guns in his apartment. According to Shea, the gun was always within reach.
Guns, he keeps loaded guns in the house. Has picked up a gun, pointed it at my face as a joke. What would you do if part of me wanted to get my keys and get in my car and leave? Because I knew if I were against his and he's dead. You know, how is anyone else to know that it's self-defense? He had guns laying on the table. And I just picked up the gun. And in the middle of him doing something with his arm or saying something crazy, shot him. I knew he was going to die or have a completely deformed face. He's very vain and wants to get a nose job. Just that kind of person. And I shot him right here. I gave him his nose job. He wanted. It was a handgun that I used. The gun was this big. I picked it up off the table. I did have to release the spook. I did. I remember it now. I can see it in my mind. And he had his hand on the table, and he wasn't completely standing up. He was like this. He was sitting. He was enough that when I think it went like this, literally. That's when I knew he was dead, or close to it, and twitching. I walked around the table. And I think that's when I shot him in the head. I shot him probably 6 times. Shot him in the head. He fell onto the ground. He was like laying like this. His glasses were still on. He was twitching some more. I shot him a couple more times just to make sure he was dead. Because I didn't want to watch him die.
As officers moved in and out of the interrogation room, Shea could be seen singing Amazing Grace and dancing around. She appeared completely disconnected from the reality unfolding around her. She spun in circles, snapped her fingers, and sang, "I killed him. I killed him. I did it. Yeah, I did it. I can't believe I did it." The only things that seemed to genuinely concern her were whether she'd be allowed to take a shower and whether she'd be able to keep her phone if she ended up going to prison.
If you go to jail, are you allowed to keep your phone? If I had to go to jail, can you shower there? Or do you just get really dirty? You have very pretty teeth. Did you have orthodontia? If I don't get any serious consequences, so I could really be happy just having a career and maybe not even ever getting married. Because this is very traumatic, you know. I don't know if anyone will ever want to marry me if they know that I killed a boyfriend in self-defense. It's not funny, but...
She talked so much and so fast that officers later admitted they had to take turns stepping out of the room just to catch their breath. One detective said she could suddenly spiral into hysterics, sobbing loudly. But the moment the door closed and someone walked out, she'd stop instantly, like flipping a switch off in a second. On the video recordings, you can hear someone say to her,
"I'll be with you in just a second. You're fine."
One officer later noted that throughout the entire time, he never actually saw a single tear, just someone imitating what crying was supposed to look like. Another detail stood out as especially strange. The first person Shea called that night wasn't 911, like investigators initially assumed. In reality, she called her mother first. It wasn't until about 15 minutes later that she finally dialed 911. The only visible sign of a struggle inside the apartment was the area near the table where Ryan was shot. Shea claimed that at one point he had thrown her into a bookshelf, but the shelf looked perfectly neat. Everything was still lined up, untouched. If someone had truly been slammed into it, those items would have fallen, no question about it. Shea couldn't stick to a single version of events for more than a few minutes. During the 911 call, she said Ryan had been holding the gun and that she had to wrestle it out of his hands. Now, she was saying she grabbed the gun from the table. With every new version, the positions of both the gun and the two of them kept changing. Police simply didn't believe any of her stories, and the way she behaved when officers stepped out of the room felt just as revealing as the words coming out of her mouth.
Thank you.
Even though she tried to frame everything as self-defense, the way she talked about what happened didn't really support that claim at all. She allowed officers to photograph her body to document the marks she said Ryan had left on her during the struggle. There were a few bruises and some faint marks, but they didn't convince investigators. Some of the injuries looked old, the kind that could have come from almost anything. And considering how she described an extremely violent physical fight, police expected to see far more serious injuries. At one point, she claimed that Ryan had locked himself inside his bedroom. Police asked the obvious question: if the situation was truly that violent, why didn't Shea take that moment to simply leave? Instead, she searched on Google for how to open the door and how to pick the lock using a hairpin. She eventually managed to get into his bedroom, after which Ryan came back out to the table. It appeared as though he was trying to hide from her. After a long, 3-hour interrogation, police had nothing left to hear. She had said everything, and then some.
Here's what's going to happen right now, Shana. Okay, with everything that we have, I'm gonna have to charge you with murder.
What degree?
Murder. There's no degree.
21-year-old Shia Hubers was charged with murder and taken into custody on a bond set at $1.5 million. Police felt even more confident after the autopsy results came back. In total, she had shot him 6 times. The first shot struck the right side of his head on a downward trajectory, more than enough to send him collapsing to the floor. The 5 shots that followed were pure overkill. That first shot wasn't fired head-on while he was standing. It came from the side at a moment when he was seated. The autopsy painted a very clear picture. Someone acting in blind rage. This was close. This was personal. This was fueled by anger. And it looked nothing like self-defense. While police were building their case against Shea, Ryan's family was dealing with the most painful tasks imaginable, planning his funeral and sorting through financial matters. Once investigators cleared the apartment, Ryan's father, Jay, went inside. The blood was still on the walls and the floor. Jay said he laid down beside the spot and just screamed. "I screamed to God. I screamed into the emptiness. I screamed at everything," he later recalled. He went back there every single day, until one day he decided he had to be the one to clean the blood himself. "I just felt this need to take care of my son the way I always had," he said. "It didn't feel right for anyone else to do it. I didn't want some stranger walking in and seeing what happened to my child. I wanted it gone." 2. People close to Ryan said the idea that he was abusive or aggressive felt completely detached from who he really was. Ryan's best friend, Allie, said that from the very first time she met Shia, she had a bad feeling. It felt wrong. Shea made it very clear that Ryan belonged to her, and that there was no room in his life for friends, especially female friends. She stayed glued to his side the entire evening, and honestly, it made people uncomfortable. Ryan's ex-girlfriend said the same thing. Nothing Shea described about their relationship matched the man Ryan had been when she was with him. "Sure," she admitted. "People can change, but this version felt extremely unlikely." And then there were Ryan's text messages. Those messages painted a very different picture, one that pointed squarely at Shea. Ryan and Shea were on and off for about 18 months. At first, there was strong chemistry, but the relationship deteriorated quickly. Ryan already had a lot on his plate: a demanding job, personal stress, and a serious legal dispute with a former business partner who sued him after Ryan left to start his own law firm. Shea didn't seem to understand that Ryan's time had to be divided between work, responsibilities, and a life beyond just her. She called him non-stop. At one point, she sent 75 messages in a single hour. According to police, the total number of messages eventually reached into the hundreds of thousands. Investigators noted that for every one message Ryan sent, Shea would respond with around 50 of her own, flooding him until he replied again. And when Ryan told her he needed space, Shea would get in her car, drive straight to his condominium, crying and begging him to take it back. She was completely fixated on him and couldn't or wouldn't accept that he wanted to leave. After a difficult spring, Ryan still hoped that summer might be different. Despite his family's concerns, he decided to give the relationship one last chance. It didn't work. He told everyone he had finally made the decision to end things for good. But Shea did what she always did. She showed up anyway. Ryan texted her that he was going to install an extra lock and turn off his phone. In response, she sent him more than 100 messages and then arrived with a spare key and let herself into the apartment. Ryan messaged his best friend Allie on Facebook, literally probably the most unhinged person I've ever met. She actually scares me. He also texted another friend. This is getting to the point where I need a restraining order. Some people might ask why he didn't just get one, but under Kentucky law, he essentially couldn't. The law requires that people either live together or be married for one person to file for a protective order against the other. Anything outside of that simply doesn't qualify. At 12:30 in the morning, Ryan knocked on his father's door, carrying an overnight bag and his laptop. He said he needed somewhere to stay. He was trying to get away from her. She was still there, and he didn't know what else to do. Jay told him, of course he could stay, but that something had to be done about the situation. As Jay closed the door to his son's room, he could hear Ryan's phone vibrating non-stop texts and calls from Shea, one after another. The next morning, Jay walked into Ryan's room and said he could physically feel his son's depression and tension. Ryan was lying face down, his head buried in the pillow. Jay hugged him and said, I love you. Ryan mumbled back, I love you too, Dad. Jay was deeply worried. But as a father, he said he also knew that sometimes you have to give your children space to be adults. Ryan returned to his now empty condominium, and the cycle began all over again. One of Ryan's neighbors, who had grown close to Shea, said Shea showed her bruises she claimed Ryan had caused. But that same neighbor also saw Shea cooking for him, cleaning, buying him gifts, and constantly doting on him. Friends who had known Shea since high school said things weren't exactly what they appeared to be. This was how she reacted to rejection or jealousy. She was extreme in everything. She couldn't accept not getting what she wanted from people and pushed until she did. Her emotions, good or bad, completely consumed her. Instead of giving Ryan the space he asked for, she kept forcing her way back into his life and his condominium, doing nice things for him. And when you boil it all down, Shea understood on some level that he was still talking to her out of guilt. In a message to a friend, she admitted, he says he's only with me because I make him feel awful when I cry. Some people, including Shea's mother, said Ryan was partly to blame for sending mixed signals that every time he broke things off, he eventually took her back. But others who knew Shea well said she was nearly impossible to reason with. For her, things weren't over until she decided they were over. Ryan didn't want to upset her because her reactions became even harder for him to deal with. But he didn't want to be with her either. He felt trapped, like there was no winning move. Shea needed constant attention and reassurance, and at the same time, it didn't seem like she was as committed to Ryan as she claimed. She admitted they were both seeing other people. In one message to a friend, she said she had been with Patrick and had contracted an STD, but she wasn't sure who she got it from. According to investigators, Shea had previously fantasized about killing Ryan. While at a shooting range, she messaged a friend saying she wanted to turn around, shoot him, kill him, and then make it look like an accident. Looking at the days leading up to his death, tensions flared again on October 11th, just one day before the tragedy. Ryan and Shea spent that evening together at his condominium, watching political debates. Later that night, around 3 in the morning, Shea called her mother, crying about a fight they had gotten into and complaining of chest pain. Without telling Ryan, her mother drove over, unlocked the door herself, and sat with her daughter. Ryan woke up to find both women sitting in his living room. He was, to put it mildly, stunned. October 12th arrived the final hours before Ryan's death. Shea continued flooding him with messages, like always. She said she was angry that he hadn't taken her to the hospital for her chest pain, but at the same time claimed she was glad her mother did, because she had supposedly been given blood pressure medication. In reality, there was no doctor and no medication. It was yet another attempt to pull at his sympathy and play on guilt. Later that same day, Ryan was at work, preparing for a meeting with none other than Miss Ohio 2012, Audrey Bolte.
Audrey Bolte, Ohio.
Like he usually did, Ryan headed out of the office that day. On his way out, he casually mentioned to his coworkers that he was planning to meet her that evening, grab a drink, play some pool. He was genuinely excited. One coworker reportedly looked uneasy, already thinking about how Shea might react. At times, things had gotten so intense that she had even suggested Ryan call a locksmith and notify the police ahead of time. But Ryan never told Shea about the date, and he had no intention of doing so. Even though Shea never mentioned Audrey's name in her interviews, her Google search history told a different story. What was actually said during those final conversations inside the Highland Heights condominium will never be known, but many believe that when Ryan told her it was over and asked her to leave, he may have mentioned the date he was about to go on, one that was supposed to happen in just minutes. That could very well have been the motive, because at the end of the day, if Shia couldn't have Ryan, then no one else was going to. Despite Shia continuing to insist on her innocence, it was time for trial. There was no dispute about who pulled the trigger that night, but the defense maintained that she acted in self-defense against an abusive man, while the prosecution pushed for a murder conviction.
In Shayna Huber's trial learned more about the night Ryan Poston was shot, and testimony took some unusual twists and turns today.
An expert testimony witness, a forensic expert from New Jersey, was called, spent a long time going through all the evidence, and when he was called to the stand, although he didn't use this word, he basically said that Shayna Hubers, was the aggressor.
The victim was alive for all of the shots. So I believe the first 3 shots in and of themselves were very damaging, but he remained alive until the last shot was given.
Then from the science, they moved to a lot of the emotion. Ryan's stepfather testified.
He said to me, he goes, my biggest issue, Dad, is I don't know what, if I'm going to be able to do this, to go on that date, because Shayna is always around. And I don't know what to do. He said, I don't know what to do to get her to leave.
Shaya told multiple people different versions of what happened that night, but the defense latched on to one specific story. In that version, she claimed she shot Ryan as he was getting up from the table and moving toward her, and she perceived him as a threat.
This was not a case of anything but self-defense. This was a case where Shayna was acting to save her own dignity and her own safety.
She fired 5 more shots because, according to her, she could see that he was still moving on the floor and she was still afraid for her life. But the prosecution's expert testified that the placement of the first bullet made that version impossible under any circumstances. They knew for certain that Ryan was struck on the right side of his head and the bullet traveled downward. The angle of entry proved he had to be seated, not standing, and not moving toward her. She could not have been in front of him, on the opposite side of the table, the way she claimed. In reality, she was right next to him to the side and above him at the moment his head fell forward onto the table. That movement exposed his back, and that's where the second bullet entered, as he collapsed to the floor. After that, she stood over him and continued firing. There was blood on the gun from backspatter, further confirming just how close she was to him. And the fact that she admitted to disengaging the safety again pointed to a level of intent. This was not someone standing back in panic and firing a single shot in self-defense during a violent struggle. Taken together, everything pointed to an intent to kill. As the trial went on, more and more people began noticing striking similarities to the murder of Travis Alexander, who was killed in 2013 by his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias, a case that captivated the world and remains infamous to this day.
The entire afternoon was devoted to one single defense expert witness whose specialty is toxicology. Now, Saeed Jortani testified that Ryan Poston had a combination of Xanax and Adderall in his system at the time that he died. Both are doctor-prescribed medications that by themselves provide exactly what the patient needs. However, Jortani added there can be problems when the 2 drugs combine in the body.
What is really interesting about this drug is that it's given to people to basically decrease their panic situation, or it's called what we call anxiolytic. That means it decreases anxiety. That's what it's made for. But in certain individuals, what it could cause is the opposite. It could cause emotional outbursts. It would cause basically discontrol and violence and so on.
Well, a couple of cellmates were called, and one after the other, they both said, look, that self-defense thing, that's just bogus. She made that up. And that's just absolutely not true, that she admitted shooting him without provocation.
Shaya's defense team tried to use every single message Ryan had ever sent, anything that showed even a hint of anger, to argue that Shaya was the victim. One example they pointed to was a text Ryan sent to a friend after learning that his former business partner had filed a lawsuit against him. In that message, he said, "I just want to burn everything to the ground and leave this city in ruins." The prosecution pushed back hard on that. Yes, it sounded intense, but it was clearly hyperbole. It was frustration, an emotional reaction to a situation he couldn't control. It had nothing to do with what happened on October 12th. More importantly, none of those messages were ever directed at Shaya. The only texts that actually involved her were the ones where Ryan talked about being afraid of what she might do to him.
Of a woman awaiting her fate. Shayna Hubers now waits for the jury's verdict. Good evening. The jury's been at it for about 4 hours now.
And this will not be an easy task. There are 5 possible options that they're debating. They include reckless homicide, manslaughter in either the first and second degree, and murder. And, of course, they could find her not guilty.
How do you know who to believe?
She's shown us that she's a manipulator. She has shown us that she will say anything she can to get what she wants, and most importantly, what she showed us on October 12th, 2012 is that she's a murderer.
Bang, bang, pause, bleeding. Bang, 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 and down he went to the floor, and they heard it. And that's truth, and that's real, and that's what happened.
There is no way that from the ground that shot occurred. It's just not physically possible.
If he would have gotten the gun, it would have been me and not him. We know that because she repeated it over and over again in the police station.
Her true character showed when she thought no one was watching.
I did. Yeah, I did. I believe.
In the end, the jury did not believe her claims of self-defense.
The jury find the defendant, Shayna Hubers, guilty of murder.
After just 5 hours of deliberation, Shayna Hubers was found guilty of the murder of Ryan Poston. Shayna, who had once been non-stop talkative, now had very little to say.
I'm sorry to my family and I'm sorry to my friends for letting them down. I am sorry for the money that my parents have had to spend on attorneys. I feel like I was led on. I feel like I was manipulated, used, and abused.
Hubers makes one last plea to the judge.
It was never about Ryan's family. It was never about them. I don't mean to hurt anyone else. I never meant to hurt anyone else.
This case comes down to one phrase.
Just once to hear the words, I shouldn't have done that.
But I listened to everything that was said in here. I never heard a word or a look that said, I'm sorry to these people back here. What I think happened in that apartment was little more than cold-blooded murder. It's probably as cold-blooded an act as I've been associated with in the criminal justice system in the 30-plus years I've been in it.
She never mentioned Ryan even once. Ryan's ex-girlfriend, Lauren, stood beside his family, stunned by how little Shayna had said. To her, the whole thing felt like nothing but a performance, and honestly, it always had. Shayna's mother was, and still is, her most outspoken defender. She insisted that her daughter was simply not capable of committing murder.
Hubers did not testify in the trial, although she did speak during an unsuccessful attempt to qualify for early parole eligibility.
Were you with 10 other men during this whole time that we're talking about? 2012, 10 different men.
How are you saying was I with them? Like, are you saying that was I friends with them? Did I sleep with them?
You slept with 10 different men during 2012.
In answer to your question, sure, I may have slept with 10 guys in 2012, but I don't see how that's relevant to any of this.
Well, luckily that's not up to you.
Listen, keep the civil tongue in your head, number one, and just answer the questions.
You do not take rejection well.
Dr. Connor did say that I don't take rejection.
You were rejected. Whether it had been earlier in the day when Ryan told you, I don't want to see you, whether it was the other times where he said, you know, we're done, this is it, no more, I need space, you were rejected by him not just once, but many times.
If I killed Ryan over rejection, he would have been dead almost 2 years prior.
I asked you if you were rejected by him.
Sure, I've been rejected. I've been rejected.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
But if that were motive, there'd be a graveyard full of men.
With that, Judge Fred Stein agrees with the jury. Shayna Hubers goes to prison. She'll be there up to 40 years until she's in her 60s.
Shayna Hubers was later officially sentenced to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. But in 2016, another unexpected twist was still waiting ahead.
Just at 7, will there be a retrial in one of the tri-state's highest profile murder cases? That is the question tonight.
In 2016, the guilty verdict was set aside. Turned out one of the jurors had an undisclosed felony record.
Shayna's conviction was overturned after it came to light that one of the jurors was a convicted felon. And under Kentucky law, anyone with a felony conviction is legally barred from serving on a jury. That same juror later explained that more than 20 years earlier, he had fallen behind on child support. Although he pleaded guilty back in 1992, he claimed he didn't realize that this technically made him a convicted felon under the law.
Poston's father, Jay, says he and his family are ready.
Life isn't fair, and this is ugly, but we will do what we have to do.
Campbell County Commonwealth Attorney Michelle Snodgrass argued the error is not relevant to the guilty verdict.
I think Mr. Craig is a very decent, honorable, honest man. I think he's a man that tried to do his best to serve his community. I think that he honestly, in his heart and his mind, believes that he did not commit a felony.
A new trial was scheduled for 2018. While awaiting the retrial, Shea married a former inmate she had met while in custody, 42-year-old Richard MCB Jr. MCB, who at the time was in the process of a transgender transition and was using the name Unique Taylor, said, "If I had to create the perfect woman and spend my entire life with her, I would create Shea Hubers."
Since her sentencing and subsequent turnover of her conviction, we've not heard a word from Shayna Hubers. That is, until now. It was the summer of 2016, and apparently love was in the air inside the Campbell County Detention Center.
I originally met McBee 2 years ago when I was taken to a recreation yard that was next to Unique Cell. And we just began talking, and that was how it happened.
Some may say that this is more by reaching out, this is more of either a publicity stunt or something to derail your second trial. What would you say to somebody that says that?
This is no stunt. I don't see Unique as a man or a woman. I see Unique as a soul that I love.
Shayna even draws a comparison between her relationship with Ryan Poston and her new love interest.
Maybe years ago, that wasn't the right person, and so we didn't understand each other as well, and Unique and I understand each other a lot better.
Calling me from the detention center, Unique defends their request to marry.
I stand up for my rights, and obviously I'll be standing up for hers too.
I'm not hoping that anyone thinks any differently of me. I'm just hoping that this ensures my right to marry under the U.S. Constitution. That's all I'm here for.
Shea also had a new defense attorney. His strategy centered on claims of extreme emotional disturbance allegedly caused by physical and psychological abuse from Ryan, along with unresolved childhood trauma. Unlike the first trial, this time Shea took the stand and testified in her own defense.
I recall Ryan standing over me and grabbing the gun that was sitting on the table and pointing it at me and saying, "I could just kill you right now and get away with it. Nobody would even know."
You saw your video?
Yes.
Your statement to the police, and you recall saying to them, it was probably that you shot him 6 or 7 times?
Yes.
Okay, so you knew it then. You just
I wasn't
forgot.
sure that it was 6 times or 7 times. I said probably, ma'am.
Good guess? Good guess on your part?
Shea admitted that there were definitely problems in the relationship. She acknowledged infidelity on both sides and went into detail about pretty much everything, including their sex life. She said she was unhappy with a lot of things, but she still loved him and kept coming back, despite his behavior. He wanted me to be his, like, incognito girlfriend. He wanted me to talk 25% less. He always said I talked too much. Shea also claimed that at one point, they even agreed to bring another woman into the relationship on the condition that Ryan would put 10 of her photos back on his Facebook profile. A profile she admitted she logged into frequently, by the way, to block other women so they wouldn't be able to see it.
4 years old, I don't need to bring a teddy bear out with me. This teddy bear was made by Jay's sister. This is Ryan's shirt.
I'm sorry, but I'm unavailable right now. If you could leave a message, I will call you back as soon as possible. Thank you.
That's it. That's all we have.
The defense's psychologist testified that an insanity plea was never considered as an option. At the same time, he said that, in his opinion, Shea suffered from borderline personality disorder, showed narcissistic traits, struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, and exhibited signs of secondary sexual trauma and sexual dysfunction. According to him, at the moment she killed Ryan, her psychological state was severely impaired. Shea also claimed that she had experienced sexual abuse as a child, once again accusing her own father of inappropriate touching. The jury went into deliberations, and everyone held their breath.
Now on 11 at 11, guilty again. The retrial for Shayna Hubers ends with the same verdict from her first trial.
Shayna Hubers cried and buried her head in the arms of one of her attorneys.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Shayna Hubers, guilty of murder.
After she was found guilty again, her attorney asked the judge to impose a 20-year sentence, arguing that Shayna could be rehabilitated and someday become a productive member of society. But on October 18, 2018, Shayna was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Since she had already served 6 years by that point, her first parole hearing is scheduled for 2032. Ryan's father, Jay, addressed Shayna's family directly. "Your daughter is sitting here breathing, laughing, talking. Maybe one day she'll sit at your table again on Thanksgiving. And I wake up every single night in pain, terrified that I'll forget the sound of my son's voice. For the past 3 years, my only purpose in life has been to get justice for my son's name. Now I have to find a new purpose."
Always, always. And it has not failed him.
After the second conviction, Shayna continued to deny any guilt in Ryan's murder. She also stated that she intended to push for a third trial. Shayna Hubers later filed for divorce. Her prison marriage officially ended in January 2019. After that, she announced that she was seeking new connections through the website Write a Prisoner. She wrote, "I've grown a lot since I was a 21-year-old girl back in October 2012, at the time of my arrest. I'm looking for someone who won't judge me by my past, but will see me for the woman I've become. No one truly knows or can explain what I've been through except me. It's hard living under the weight of false wrongful conviction theories pushed by the media for television ratings, along with constant judgment on social media and in the court of public opinion. To this day, there are people who believe she acted in self-defense and that, deep down, she's a good person. Others are convinced she's exactly where she belongs behind bars, unable to hurt anyone else. For everyone who knew Ryan, the fact that she was found guilty twice brought a sense of relief. At the same time, it was deeply unsettling to even imagine that one day she could be released, and that it might happen so soon. Ryan's father, Jay, took in Ryan's dog, Oliver, and now brings him everywhere, believing that in doing so, a part of his son is always with him. When Jay was asked how someone even survives something like this, he said, "It feels like I'm constantly looking for him, or afraid that he's in danger and I can't help him. It's terrifying waking up in the middle of the night feeling like your heart is about to break, with tears just streaming down your face." From the moment Ryan was born, I measured my own well-being through his life. My plan was simple. I'd be there for my son, become a loving grandfather one day. That was everything my life was built on. My last name ends with his name. He was my continuation. He was the last piece of me. Thank you to everyone who stayed with us through this story. If you'd like to support the channel and help us continue creating content, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. Wishing you all good health and a good mood, and take care of yourselves.